expert, the guy. Matty's got jokes and a wild ride. 30 minutes, no time to spare. Stack your lineup, win anywhere. NFL SuperCoach HALFA. Get your edge, get faster. Taylor leads, Matty's laughter. NFL SuperCoach HALFA.
For one last time this season, you're here with your boy Taylor. And what a treat we have for you, because tonight I am with who soared above everyone as he flew, and his SuperCoach points only grew. So sit back as we dissect through Joshua Foote and his SuperCoach HALFA winning crew. Let's fucking go. Thank you, SuperCoaches. Here is Taylor. We are going to go into our last episode of the year. Unfortunately, Matty C could not be with us tonight for this, end of the season review. But look, for anyone that listened to the last episode and saw me talking shit on the Facebook groups, it isn't to do with a hangover or a super long hangover. Yes, he definitely had a few too many beverages on that night, but he definitely has some other things he had to attend to family-wise. So, Matty C, sorry you couldn't be here tonight, mate, but look, we're in for an amazing night tonight. And again, I just want to start with this. I've talked about this all season, but guys, I'm so thankful to all you SuperCoaches for all the support you have given this podcast. And this is going to be a perfect podcast tonight to showcase how much we love all you guys. And tonight we are going to have the winner of our SuperCoach group. We've brought up every single week the leaderboard and the fact that we were giving away a custom NFL jersey to the winner. And tonight we get to meet the man that has won that and has been such a big supporter of the podcast. So, look, I'm just going to go jump straight into it. I already brought up his name in the weird little rhyme that I do every single week. So, welcome Joshua Foote, the coach of the ASHTON Jeantyieasers.
How you going, mate? Good to be here.
No worries, mate. Sorry for my weird little rant on the I'm sure everyone's been listening to all my sort of rhymes and all season, but look, mate, it's been absolutely amazing to have you here, and I'm so glad that we get to showcase the winner of our group in the first season of NFL SuperCoach.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Good to be here as well. Looking forward to having a chat with you and discussing how the season went and whatnot, and
Yeah, look, mate, as me and Matty C have brought up, like I've kind of come from my own background of, doing a lot of NFL fantasy, but, sort of doing a lot of SuperCoach as well. Matty C himself hadn't done a lot of SuperCoach, but he's done a lot of NFL fantasy. But it's so good to sort of, see the support that we had from 300 plus SuperCoaches like yourself. And, mate, we like to crow about how good that we had a certain week, but we were watching you guys in that top five and you guys were just dominating every single week. And, it was just amazing to see Australians really supporting the NFL product.
Yeah, it was good. We had don't get me wrong, we had a lot of luck involved throughout the year to get some of the points that I got. But more often than not, the advice that I got from this page was actually very helpful, more than you probably think. And it was definitely one of the reasons that I got over the line in the end, to be honest.
That's awesome, mate, because, we don't always get everything right. Like me and Matty C are obviously talking to each other the entire time, and we don't know exactly what information's getting out there and what isn't. And, I'll get into this in a sec when we bring up sort of questions about our starting teams and what we did right and wrong. But, my God, my team was an absolute fucking disaster at the start of the season. I was playing catch-up from the get-go, so I was hoping that I didn't ruin too many SuperCoaches NFL experiences too early. I'm hoping that they sort of caught me more during the season and the trade-ins and trade-outs, because weirdly I was going through like what trade-ins I made mistakes with, and I didn't actually make too many mistakes with my trade-ins. It was just my starting team that was an absolute disaster, mate. So it's absolutely great to hear that the winner of our SuperCoach group actually took some great advice from us. So
you'd be surprised how often I had like a 50-50 call each week, and like the deciding factor was listening to the pod, and that was kind of the tipping point to make me choose the right one. And it actually more often than not benefited me more than hindered my chances. So it was actually really helpful.
That's awesome, mate. Like, we are so happy to hear that. And look, to be honest, I didn't sort of send you this question off the bat, but it probably makes sense just to get into this first off. Is what NFL jersey are you choosing?
Yeah, so after I won, I obviously celebrated on the beers that night.
As
Went
we
down to
do.
went down to the tennis in Brizzy, and I was with a bunch of mates talking about it and whatnot. But throughout the year, I was in a bit of a group with my two mates from uni actually, and they're regulars on this podcast as well. Shout out Michael Pickard, Michael Berry. And yeah, throughout the year, we always thought it'd be funny that if one of us was to win, we would get a bloke by the name of Nathan Peterman. If anyone out there has heard of him, he is a future Hall of Famer in our eyes with a career of more interceptions than touchdowns. And we look at him as our god, basically. And we think if he's able to make it in the NFL, and I think he's still actually in it, I'm actually not sure. But yeah, we thought it'd be funny to kind of get his name on the back of the jersey. But I'm also a Seattle fan, so I thought I'd get on the back of his Seattle jersey as well. So that's what I've gone with.
For any NRL Supercoach heads out there that like to listen, think about that game that Dom Young had where he basically got sent off. I think he ended up with like minus 15. People were captaining him. I think it was against the Bulldogs as well, and that was an absolute schmozzle. Basically, that's what Nathan Peterman basically threw up every single game.
Yeah, it was a regular.
Like,
That was a good game for him, actually.
yeah, exactly. Only minus 15. Like he's absolutely loving that from a fantasy score. But yeah, Nathan Peterman's basically gone down as like basically one of the worst statistical quarterbacks, if not the worst of all time. So I'm not surprised that you guys sort of have a in group joke about him. So that's actually really cool, mate, that you've done that. And for anyone out there, mate, we'll definitely put a photo up when that jersey turns up. Me and Matty C have already paid and got the jersey sent out to you. So hopefully that turns up to you soon.
Yeah, no worries. I'm looking out for it.
Absolutely, mate. So what I thought we'd do was we'd just get into a few questions, and it won't be a super long pod. It might actually be the first podcast all year that goes somewhere near the actual half an hour that we said that we would do, and I think we'll probably get rid of that name next year because Matty C and I just don't give a sweet fuck about it. But what I thought we would do is go through, I guess, the start of the season, sort of work our way through, and I guess like what I was basically going to do is just the first question is best decision in your starting team. So what was something that you started with at the start of the year and you just thought that was sort of what set me up for success this year?
I think looking back on it, I actually had to have a look as well because I kind of forgot how I did start. But the main thing that helped me at the start was just obviously I went very much heavy on primos and rookies. I didn't get many mid-range players at all. And it was kind of a collective on the best players that I had. And I basically came down with Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, and Nakua. And the reason I kind of picked those three was because they were basically mainstays in my team the entire time. And I didn't have to trade them at any point, and they produced week in, week out. And I think maybe out of those three was McCaffrey, because although everyone knows he is such a gun at this sport, but I think I can't remember the percentages of owned, but he was not highly owned because he has like a lot of injury potential, and everyone's scared of him getting injured, I guess. But this year he lasted the whole year, so I didn't have to burn any trades trading him out. He was in my team the whole year. He was my captain multiple times. He just produced big scores throughout, and yeah, he was kind of my mainstay. So I'd probably have to go with McCaffrey out of everyone.
Yeah, mate, honestly, if you had to pick a fantasy MVP, whether it was Supercoach or just regular NFL fantasy, I think McCaffrey was it because, like you mentioned, people hung off him because of that injury risk. I think there was a few days just before the season started and they released a report that he had a calf niggle, and so everyone just freaked out. I think people got rid of him and they were starting to, wonder whether Brian Robinson was going to be the guy for the Niners this year, and it was like that risk-reward thing where if you took the shot on CMC early, you were just completely rewarded. What I thought I would do tonight is I mentioned you in the green room before we started. I might answer these questions myself too because I figured that there's a lot of people like me and Matty C haven't really spoken a lot about ourselves and I guess our review for our own teams and even just some of the questions about ourselves. I thought it wasn't a bad idea to sort of speak about myself, but I had a terrible starting team. Like, I had so many problems, and I'm looking back on it. And if anything, I spent my entire season fixing leaks in my team. And it's probably why, like, if you look at my graph, it's basically like 12,000 at the start. And then I just like slowly pegged it back the entire season. And then I end up finishing just outside the top 1,000. So I was pretty happy with that in the end. But my things I sort of wrote down as a start, and my notes were this is an unbelievably short list because my starting team was the absolute worst part of my season. But starting with CMC was literally the first thing I wrote down. So completely right what you just brought up. Yeah. And in the first week, captaining Josh Allen just sort of got me off to at least like an okay start because I think he scored like 70 on against the Ravens in that first week, and I think a few people had captained elsewhere. So
you just reminded me of that game actually, because I didn't start with Allen, and I think he had absolutely not a great total going into the fourth quarter.
No, he
just went madness, and I just couldn't believe it. I thought I'd made the greatest choice ever in not having him, and then he started with whatever that score was, 70 or 80, and I was sitting there going, "Fuck, I'm going to be behind the 8 ball here." But anyway,
well, this leads to my next question. And the person that won our league, you wouldn't think there would be too many problems with this, but my next question was worst decision in your starting team.
Yeah, so this was kind of hands down a pretty easy pick for me, and more so because I ended up having him for the entire year as well, and that's how much it annoyed me because I couldn't trade him out. And it was actually Barkley. Yeah. And the reason for that is obviously come off like a historical year last year, and, you know, you just kind of expect him to kind of stick to those guns and hang around that kind of, I guess, level of output in terms of SuperCoach, and he was just nowhere near it. And every week you'd be sitting there going, all right, he's going to turn this around next week, but he just never did. And each week you'd think he'd have another easy matchup that he'd finally come good at, and then Hurts would take his touchdowns or something like that, or he just would not get any rushing yards, and it was just an absolute pain in the ass the whole year. So he was probably my worst starter, and especially because I held him for the entire year.
Mate, I don't know how many segments he could pop up in. He's definitely going to be one of these guys that, you know, is going to feature probably a lot tonight in this podcast, because I'm with you. He's definitely someone that I've sort of written down as worst decision. We've even got something that we talk about, worst hold. He'll definitely probably feature. They might even
there's a good chance he might be in there.
They might even name the segment after him. We'll get to that later. But, mate, I'm with you. I thought Saquon was going to sort of just rinse and repeat from last year. A huge problem with him this year was the O-line play just wasn't there. Like last year, his offensive line was so amazing, and I brought this up in the preseason last year for anyone that was listening to our regular NFL fantasy content, that I thought he was a huge buy low from when he came from the Giants, because I just thought his O-line at the Giants was like basically the worst in the league, and what he went to the Eagles was the biggest change you could ever have. And then all of a sudden he has this dominant year, and I feel like I'm, you know, basically the fucking best thing since sliced bread picking that. But the problem was I came into SuperCoach this year going, well, he's still got that same offensive line. He should do the same thing. And then all of a sudden he had injuries, like things weren't the same. They're starting to see the loss of Jason Kelce a little bit. That offensive line just didn't play the same. Saquon just didn't have the same gaps. He was running into the arsehole of his bloody offensive line the entire year. So it was a tough year.
Yeah, it was a killer.
Look, I don't know where to begin. This is tough for me, mate. Like, I don't want to take up the podcast. This is a podcast to hear from you and the winner of our league. So I don't want to take up too much of the spotlight here. But there's a few ones that I really, really got wrong. And the biggest one was, and I brought this up with Matty C pretty quickly, we did a wide receiver preseason show, and I talked up Amon-Ra and Puka so much. Like I said, they were in my team. I talked about why they were basically the closest thing you could get to base stats in NFL SuperCoach for anyone that does NRL. Yes, there are no technical base stats in NFL because you are required to get a pass from a quarterback. So technically, you can't just like basically, you know, do what you do in NRL to get base stats. But I felt like these guys were the closest thing to it, and I stupidly went away from it. I wanted to fill my team with guys a little bit less expensive, And I basically ended up with going guys like Drake London, Mike Evans, and Tyreek Hill. I fixed it relatively quickly, which makes me feel a little bit better. And I also ended up with a guy like named Xavier Worthy. For anyone who remembers, did his shoulder in the first drive of the fucking season. So, yeah, that was a really good start. And just to add to that, I also had Hawkinson in tight end, who was a giant turd. And if there's anyone that was a bigger turd, it was fucking David Njoku, who didn't even end up the best tight end on his team. I was hugely high on him this season, especially when Joe Flacco was the quarterback. I just thought they were going to rekindle their relationship, and it was an absolute nightmare. And then my last on my list was Saquon. So, mate, I'm with you. I probably had more issues with my starting team than you probably did, so it makes sense that I spoke about that for a fair bit longer. We'll get to something positive next. What was your best trade-in of the season?
Yeah, so my best trade-in was probably what defined my season in a way, to be honest. And it was Jackson Dart, but hear me out. The reason that he was my best trade-in was I know in the end every man and their dog pretty well had him at some point.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah, we'll just move past that.
Yeah. Anyway, the main reason he was my best trade-in was I started the season with Burrow and Lamar as my quarterbacks. And it just so happened, I think week 3 or week 4, Burrow went down injured. And then during that same week was the same week that Dart actually debuted. And I was actually watching that game, and he just kind of caught my eye pretty early and just shown that he had quite big SuperCoach potential with the amount of times he'd run the ball, his combination with Cam at running back, and then also he was just hitting his wide receivers on a dime basically, and it just showed a lot of potential. I think he scored like maybe 40 or 45 in his first week. And because I had to replace Burrow, the obvious choice would have been to go straight to Allen, but like Allen had a bye 3 or 4 weeks later, and so I basically took the risk. And before any like price rises, I went straight from Burrow down to Dart, and I had like 25 mil sitting in the bank, and I was like, this is a bit stupid, but we'll see how we go. And that was kind of the risk that I took, and it saved me a bunch of trades when it came to that point when Allen and Lamar had a bye, and then Lamar got injured as well, and it just would have been back and forth trading. And then I also, I guess, got Dart at bottom dollar, and I kind of backed him to pretty well match Allen for that 3 weeks, plus the bye week that Allen wouldn't play. And I figured out that he could probably score more points, plus I get all that money that he'd make, and that's kind of how it turned out. And that was the period where I really shot up the rankings, I think. That was by far my best trade. It was just the time that I did it.
I think that might have been the time when this podcast really hurt people, because I still remember that period, and me and Matty C was still on the side of, like, because McCarthy was 1 game away from making his money, and we just didn't know, like, injury-wise, like, people were moving from McCarthy over to Dart, and I didn't understand it because I was like, well, they've both got the same break-even. Yes, technically Dart, we know he's playing next week, but I'm certain that McCarthy isn't far away. Lo and behold, it was because they were basically trying to shadow bench him for fucking Carson Wentz. And the only reason he even got his job back was because Carson Wentz then got injured. So it was just one of those tough ones where Matty C and I sort of struggled to, like, go away from the NFL fantasy side of things and only look at it from SuperCoach like lens. And we were just like, look, we believe this guy's back soon. We don't understand why you would move, but that probably was the, like, defining thing for both of our seasons, where, like, if you would move McCarthy to Dart, then Dart made like $14 or $15 million in the next like 3 weeks, and McCarthy hadn't even played yet. It was such a massive difference for people that did. So again, like, me and Matty are more than, like, willing to own what we did wrong. So that was 100% one wrong, and I'm glad that you didn't listen to that and you got on Dart. And this is why, like, we get things right, we get things wrong. You go with your own gut. Your gut said go with Dart. We said we thought we would stick with McCarthy, and you won out. So that's why listeners should listen to us with a grain of salt, or anyone they're listening to. You always go with your own gut.
No, so I actually reckon that what you guys were saying was spot on. I personally wouldn't trade sideways McCarthy to Dart. It was because I had Burrow that was injured that I had to trade Burrow to somebody. And that's where I actually went down to Dart through him, and I kept McCarthy on the bench. So I do agree with what you were saying during those podcasts that, yeah, it's a waste of a trade to go sideways between rookies when you know they're about to make money. And I also waited out on McCarthy to make his money before I traded him out later on. But yeah, it was purely because Burrow went down is what made me get Dart and pick him up. And as I said, I had that choice between obviously Allen or Dart, and I chose Dart, and it worked out. Like, as I said, I had like almost 25 mil sitting in my bank, and then that also allowed me to purchase like primo wide receivers, running back. So I pretty well stacked like so early because of that, whilst Dart was making money, and then I pretty well just sideways traded Dart to Allen as soon as I could after the bye week.
That's huge. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, whether it was the way that you did it or even just what we said people not to do was McCarthy to Dart, it worked out going to Dart either way. So, yeah, like what you're saying wasn't exactly what we went through, but what we tried to say definitely didn't work out. So that's one thing that we'll definitely take into preseason and have a look at for next year. But I'll mention my best trade in, and for anyone that has been in any group chat with me or has been listening to me on this podcast, this man turned into Jerry Rice fucking Jr. during the year. I traded Rome Odunze to this guy in about week 11, I think it was. It was basically right before Rome Odunze fell off. I traded him to Michael Wilson, and he was my best trade in by a fucking mile. Like, he turned my entire season around. Like, the timing was perfect, like I just mentioned, Rome collapsing, and Michael Wilson, like, I'll admit, like, he wasn't so much what I thought was a long-term play, because obviously the stats he was getting initially was more like we all thought at that time was because Marv wasn't playing. So I was like looking at this break even. It was finally one where I probably took the SuperCoach lens more than my own NFL sort of fantasy knowledge, where I was like, this guy's got a break even of minus 45. And then my thought process was with Jacoby Brissett there, he seems to be just feeding this guy. There seems to be, because like what happens in NFL fantasy, right, is if you get a backup quarterback, sometimes they've been used to feeding a backup wide receiver in their practicing. And so sometimes like they just have that connection already. And I wondered whether maybe he just has a better connection of Michael Wilson than he does with Marvin Harrison, because maybe Kyler was the one that had the connection with Harrison. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to get in on this. Worst case scenario, if he falls apart in like 3 or 4 weeks and goes back to being the wide receiver 2 or 3, blah, 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 at least I've made $6 million and I can work it out later. But in the end, he just kept going. Like, it was unbelievable. He had like one game in between where he sort of fell off when Marv first came back, and I was a little bit worried, and I was able to bench him that week because Marv came back. But then all of a sudden, he just dominated the rest of the season. It was... Honestly, he was the pod of all pods. Like, not a lot of people had him. Not many people took the shot at him, and I think he kind of had a stigma about him that no one else really felt the need to bring him in. They were kind of worried the entire time that it was going to fall off, so it kept the masses from jumping on him, which is huge in SuperCoach. You don't want everyone just jumping on your pods, so. Yeah, that was my biggest win of the absolute season. The other one I'll just quickly mention was I'm a huge Jackson Smith and Jigba fan. Like, I love that guy. Like, I'm not surprised I didn't start with him, because I didn't get him a lot in regular NFL fantasy this year because my worry was Sam Darnold. I just didn't know what the connection was going to be like with him. But I changed quickly. I literally traded in JSN in week 2. And that was before the masses kind of got on him. So I would say that was probably my second best trade in, was getting JSN very, very quickly. I think I made a mistake, though. I think I got him and Garrett Wilson after week 1. And
then Wilson went down injured.
Yep, and one of those worked. And then Justin Fields turned into an absolute pumpkin again with his arm, blah, blah, blah. But I will say it still worked out, because getting on JSN in week 2 was a huge win. So
yeah, that's a big win. I think anytime you beat the masses to a player is definitely just a big win. When you get a couple of weeks ahead in terms of points, like, getting that 50 or 60 ahead and cheaper before people get on is just a huge win.
Absolutely. Same as any sport, mate. Well, you and I are both NRL heads with the SuperCoach side of things. If you get that guy before everyone gets on him, especially if they've gone up like 100K or something, you get on that Brian Toto or you Jacob Kraz or something. You get on that guy that's like just scored 3 tries in a row or something and had good base stats at the same time, then everyone's on him, and you're just hoping that you get on before the 100K sort of price rise and stuff like that. But all right, here's a good one, I thought. What was your worst trade-in of the season?
Yeah, this was an easy one for me. It was bringing in Lamar the second time.
Yeah.
So,
mate, you and I are on the same boat here. So you wax lyrical.
I have never been so frustrated watching a man play NFL, basically, and I was hell-bent basically on finishing with Allen and Lamar, who I ultimately didn't finish with either, which is funny. But during that period where he got injured, I was just setting up to basically trade straight to him as soon as he come back, expecting him to return to how he is, how his Supercoach output is. And for those 3 weeks where he didn't throw a single touchdown, didn't rush for any, and I'm pretty sure there were about 3 or 4 drop sitters in the end zone by Flowers, of all people, I think it was. It was just a frustrating watch. And not only did I lose a heap of money from it, but also the points were just not coming. And it was the same situation. Like, he's such a gun player and you want to keep him because you think his form's going to turn around, but it just never did. And I think when he got injured after that time, it was just a bit of a hallelujah moment because it just told me to fuck him off.
Mate, I'm 100% with you. And I will at least give myself the slightest bit of credit. I was on the pod and I was holding off for a while. I was like, you know what? I can wait. His break-even's high. I think it was like a Jets game where I was like, this Jets defense has given up for the season. This is the moment. And he's still at a high break-even. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to get him in. So at least I held off from like losing maybe $4 million that you could have lost like if you brought him in 2 weeks earlier. So I wasn't at the absolute highest or peak loss, but I still got him in like the 20-something million. So I still lost another 4 or 5 million on him, and it was an absolute fucking disaster. Like every week he was just so bad, and you had the VC on him if he was playing early, and
every time.
I think there was one game I even had the C on. I think I went I went to C against the Jets, and it was a fucking disaster like that. I'm with you, mate. Like that really, really hurt. I also wrote down for this segment, if starting with Saquon and Hawkinson counts, then I'll add that in. But it wasn't exactly a trade-in because I started with them, but I just thought they deserved the shit sandwich that they gave me. But yeah, mate, I was absolutely with you with Lamar. Like the second time, it was an absolute disaster.
So frustrating.
Mate, I feel like I've already brought these guys up. We've probably sort of talked about it already. My next question was worst hold, and I've written down that we call this the Saquon Jefferson Award. I'll just touch on mine first. Mine was Saquon and Hawkinson. I didn't have Jefferson, so I didn't have to worry about it. That was more of a Matty C thing. We sort of touched on that during the podcast during the year. Saquon and Hawkinson was mine. Saquon lasted the entire year until I finally nuffed him out to get the Henry score in the second last week of the year. Hawkinson was one that I finally got rid of, but it was too long. Like I just kept thinking he was going to, and it wasn't just that I held him. It was that I was playing him over Tyler Warren earlier in the year, and I was just like, this is destroying me. Like Tyler Warren's having a great rookie season. I just kept thinking things were going to get better for Hawkinson. They never did. So that was my worst hold of the season, mate. What about you?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if anyone had an answer outside of Barkley or Jefferson, to be honest.
Yeah.
So having said that, my worst hold was Barkley, and I held him from start to finish. So it was a painful ride, and I think I played him for probably more than half the year's games as well. So it was the same thing. Like you just think a player as good as he is going to come good, and then the following week he'd have an easy matchup, so you'd throw him in, and he'd just produce absolute shit. And then, I think there was 1 week where he played the Giants for the second time in the year, and I think the first game he only got like 15 or maybe even 10 or something like that. And I was like, no, I'm not falling for this trap again. And I left him on the bench. And I think that was his highest score of the year. And he got like 60 something. And he was just playing games in my head. And I was just like, nah, yeah. But anyway, I held him for the whole year, and that's easily my worst hold.
It's great to hear even a person that wins a Supercoach group, they're still dealing with the same shit I was, because, mate, I was dealing with that as well. All right, the next one is, who's a player you were glad you avoided?
Yeah. So basically going off the last question as well with your Saquon Jefferson award, I never owned Jefferson. So that was an easy player I'm glad I've avoided, because I think for the same reasons as Barkley, I think you'd just be kind of holding him all year thinking for him to come good, and he never did. And yeah, I thankfully didn't have to deal with that. The blokes in my group chat from home here, who I mentioned before, I think they both had Jefferson, and I was watching their frustrations unfold, and yeah, I luckily didn't have to deal with that. So yeah, easily best player I avoided.
Mine were a couple of wide receivers. One, I was super vocal about avoiding this guy in basically all fantasy this year. I felt like his stats he got at the end of last year was sort of fickle, and there was a reason why, and I just didn't understand why he was getting taken in the sort of more of the draft side of things so high. And obviously, because he had a good finish this season, his price was kind of up there a little bit in Supercoach, was Lad McConkey. For the Chargers. I was trying to talk people away from him pretty much all off season, and it's one I definitely felt like I got right. I just felt like the Chargers, if they had a bit of a better running game, he didn't have really anyone that was basically taking targets off him at the end of last year, whereas they bring in Keenan Allen, they draft Trey Harris, they've got, more guys that they can sort of go to. You even saw Gadsden sort of take over from the tight end position there for a little while. Like, there was just more mouths to feed in the offense. So I was pretty happy I avoided him. I was always kind of staying away from him. The one that I was close to starting with that I'm really, really fucking glad that I stayed away from was Brian Thomas Jr. I had him in a lot of builds at the start of my year, and he was a fucking disaster. Like, he had possibly one of the worst seasons from a guy that was getting drafted in regular NFL fantasy, like at the end of the first round, early second round. Like, he was so bad. Like, it wasn't just the scheme. It was like the fact that he couldn't even catch a ball. Like, everything he did last year was just completely dismantled this season. Like, he had one of the worst seasons you'll ever see from a highly drafted wide receiver. I'm just going to toot my own horn quickly here too. I talked so many people out of Mahomes after that Cowboys game. So this isn't really one that I'm looking at going I was close to bringing in, because I literally made an entire case the fact that he was going from the Cowboys to the Texans. Yes, I've also mentioned that I can't predict an ACL tear. Like, that what he ended up doing when he got injured, is not something that I can predict. But the fact that he went to the Texans and had a horrendous game, him and Rashee Rice, I kind of did a little tandem thing on the podcast where they were the most two traded in players, because they both had awesome games because of the Cowboys, and I tried to talk everyone out of it. And hopefully as many people that were listening to the podcast did, because they both had horrendous games and they both basically went to shit their entire seasons after that. So that was definitely one that I'm definitely glad I avoided.
Yeah, I've actually got one more as well, thinking about it, was the hype around Rome Odunze at one point as well.
Yep.
I feel like I didn't burn a trade on him, which was quite useful, because there was a point where everyone was trying to get him. And just mid-rangers that you just don't think are going to make any money are kind of useless in a way. And if they're going to keep their value, the end game is to keep making money and then upgrade to your primos. And yeah, Odunze was just kind of idling around that same price. And I think a lot of people did get him at one point, and yeah, he didn't really pay any dividends back at you. And my mate Barry was loving Odunze for quite a lot of the year, and it didn't pay for him. So yeah, unlucky, mate.
Is that your Brendan Piakura of the season? Yeah, sort of low to mid-ranger that just didn't really pan out. Oh, my God, what an absolute sack shit that guy was. Anyway, we'll get back to the NFL. Next one is, mate, player that you wish you had brought in.
Yeah, so going back to a player that you were just speaking to about before, because I actually did own him for a week, but I ended up trading him out for reasons I'll tell you in a second. But that player was Michael Wilson.
Ooh.
And I went through the exact same thought process as you did. And during that particular week where you were going to make money on him, I also brought him in, and it was purely for a 1 to 2 week play.
Yep.
And I'd trade him in for that week. I got that score, that whatever he got. And then it was, I think Harrison was then out for another week maybe, or he came back. I can't remember. But anyway, it was the same week that Amon-Ra went down, and everyone thought that he was definitely going to be out for a little bit. Yep. So I actually put Amon-Ra on the bench, and I decided to trade Wilson back out because I thought long-term Amon-Ra is the better hold. And it just so happened very last minute, like the day of the Marvin Harrison came back, like he was still producing. Brissett was just feeding him. But yeah, I missed out on all those points from that point onwards, purely because the app kind of crashed at the time. So I only got 1 week output on him, but I did see the same thing. And yeah, I thought he was a great player and a great pod as well, but I missed out.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. There was so much info about the fact that the thing crashed. I guess it was just because there was so many people going in and like adding Amon-Ra back into their team or something. I assume it just sort of fried the actual system. But I remember, again, like I apologise to every Supercoacher that was listening to our podcast. Like me and Matty C, we always tried to find time to get it out there to you guys quick enough. And that was one of those weeks where we literally were recording as we found out that news. So we actually literally mentioned the news, but I don't know if we actually were able to post the actual podcast quick enough to actually be before the game. So that's a huge, again, apologies to us. We'll definitely be rectifying that next season. But yeah, look, it was a tough one. Like everyone thought that Amon-Ra was out that game. Like we had literally done an entire podcast that day, assuming Amon-Ra was out until we eventually got the word that he was in. So, mate, definitely don't hate on you for that decision. And again, like the Michael Wilson thing, it did seem like I even mentioned that I thought that with Harrison coming back, it could have definitely taken away from what he was doing. And I was just in a position that I was able to sort of just play Amon-Ra and then hold. But if I was in a position where my app fucked up, I might not have been able to do the same thing. So I might have been in your same position.
Yeah, and not that I would have played him that week because I think Harrison was coming back, but then I would have seen the score that he scored that following week, which was also good, and then just kept him. And yeah, I think I also had Rice. I had him during the period where he was good, but then he petered out a bit and he was pretty shit. And there were the games where I would have had Wilson instead. And yeah, there could have been an extra maybe 100 points there at least.
I've got a couple. This one was huge. Like this was the one that was like the rainbow fucking Mario Kart strip for everyone in the middle of the season. It was Jonathan Taylor. I just didn't get him. It was just one of those things where I had what I thought was a very good running back core in my starters, and I just didn't see the point of moving over to him. Yes, this was like one of those situations where it was score one for the super coaches, like the people with the super coach brain, because it's like all this was like minus break evens. This guy's dominating. He's on a tear. It's like that makes sense from a super coach side of things to get him in if you just take away like literally looking at the games and stuff like that. And that was where a lot of people got one up on me and even Matty C. I don't think he brought him in either. And it was just like we didn't understand the point of moving like a Jahmyr Gibbs, a CMC, at that time, Saquon. We just didn't understand why you would need to move those guys over to another good running back. It just felt like it was a sideways move. And in the end, it's what cost us a better rank, because like all these people just absolutely took a rocket ship to the moon because they had Jonathan Taylor. So that was one I 100% missed.
That was the reason why Dart was my best trade in as well, because I downgraded Burrow to Dart. I had like 25 million in the bank.
There you go.
And I was buying players, like I was upgrading Genty to Taylor.
Yep.
And doing that kind of thing and upgrading elsewhere. And that's how I was lucky to get him. But yeah, Taylor got up to a price where he was like 30 mil, and then it got to a point where he wasn't worth it, but people were still trying to bring him in. And that kind of, I think, screwed over a lot of other people's teams spending so much money on him, because then he dropped 10 mil not long after.
That was the only thing I felt like I did right, was I then didn't try to buy in those guys either. Yeah. So it was like, it felt like my season was always a long-term play. It was like I missed out on all these scores, but then I wasn't the guy that was bringing in these guys for super high-end scores. I still remember I talked to Matty C on the podcast a few times. It was like I had a question in the mailbag, and it was basically Jahmyr Gibbs or Jonathan Taylor. And at that time, I was super high on the Jahmyr Gibbs side, And then, like, the next 4 weeks, it was just absolute domination for Jonathan Taylor. And I was like, fuck's sake, like, I could not have got this thing more wrong.
Good
and
advice.
then it was like, then it was just completely turned back in my favor. But it's like, this is why Supercoach is such a, like, I say fickle thing, but it's like timing. It's like, if I just said Jonathan Taylor at that time and then had him for the next 4 weeks, you know what, go back to Jimmy Gibbs in 4 weeks' time. It's more about timing than it is deciding what player is better than the other for the whole season. So that's where things are a bit different in Supercoach than, say, NFL fantasy.
Yeah.
My other one quickly was Trey McBride. It wasn't so much I felt like he wasn't a good trade in. It was just that the ship kind of sailed for me quickly. I obviously had my own problems at tight end with fucking Hawkinson and Njoku and stuff like that. I finally started playing Tyler Warren probably at the wrong time where he started to fucking tail off a bit. I will say that my call on George Kittle when he was playing being basically the same as McBride, especially the fact he was always sort of that 4 or 5 million less than him, I was actually pretty happy with that. Like, the actual production you got out of Kittle when he was playing was actually pretty close to what you were getting out of McBride. But in the end, it was McBride lapped the field at tight end. Like, if you just got him anywhere near you were getting that price for Bowers and Kittle around that early season price, it just completely was a game changer for the season. So he's definitely someone that I wish I'd brought in at some stage.
Yeah, I luckily started with McBride, but I also avoided the whole Bowers and Waller situations where they were just in and out of the team and getting injured and whatnot. But yeah, I did make one trade at tight end, and that was Kittle towards the end of the year because he did have a good output. And I think I did use your advice as well for that, actually. So
yeah,
I think when you mentioned that like the whole golden run for San Fran or whatnot.
Yep. Yeah, I think I used the Mario Kart Rainbow Strip at that time, and it was one of their defense.
Yeah.
So it actually worked out because their defense fucking sucks ass. Like, it is so bad. All right, mate. I thought, given we've just been doing a lot of Supercoach questions, I know technically this first question's actually still to do with the NFL, but I thought we'd just do some sort of, questions about yourself and things like that. But I thought the first one would be, how long have you sort of followed the NFL?
Yeah, I've been following it for probably about 12 or 13 years, I think it is. I was introduced to it as a younger kid. When I used to play golf in juniors with a kid who was from America, and our family kind of become really good, close to them and really good friends and whatnot. We ended up going over there quite often, and yeah, they were big Seattle fans, and we'd often be over there during a Seattle game, or they'd be telling us about Seattle because that was the year they beat Denver in the Super Bowl when they were big underdogs, and I think they won by about 40 in that game. It was like a whitewash. But I'm thinking that was 2012, 2013, something like that. And then, from that kind of point onwards, I was always kind of just asking questions about it, just watching the game, going over to their house and watching it. And if you see Americans that love NFL, they're pretty heavy into it. It's a big day to watch their team play. So going over there after a game of golf with their son and whatnot, and sitting down and watching Seattle, that was kind of how I got into it about 12 years ago.
That's awesome. I spoke to you on our little messenger group that I got a chance to go see a game. My brother-in-law lives in Vancouver, and I got some tickets to go down and see a game. Long story short, basically got a little bit drunk, inebriated, almost was sleepless or sleeping in Seattle and couldn't find my way back to where I was meant to get picked up to go back to Vancouver. Anyway, long story short, we'll move on from that one.
Long story short, good night out.
Yeah, absolutely. Good day / night out for myself. To answer that myself, I've been following it since, I've been following a lot of American sports since I was really, really young. I've been super into sport my entire life. A lot of my teams and stuff that I sort of gained was actually from video games when I was young. Like, I loved playing 2K4 and stuff like that in 2004. I literally started going for the Titans because of Steve McNair and Eddie George. I absolutely love those guys. And so I've been following NFL for 20 plus years. You could honestly pick any sport and I could probably tell you I've been following it for 20 plus years. That's just the way I've always been. So, look, the next one is, how long have you been playing NFL fantasy and then Supercoach in general, and then what sports have you been playing Supercoach in? So I guess that's a three-pronged question for you, mate.
Yeah, so I'd never played NFL fantasy before because I actually kind of really didn't know it existed. I thought it was more of a draft thing,
Yep.
and draft has not always kind of been my cup of tea. I've enjoyed the Supercoach format more often than anything. I've dabbled in a few other fantasies like AFL at times, and at the time I didn't really know the players well enough and the scoring system enough to I guess understand what the best options were in terms of trading and the players you really want and all that kind of stuff. I did EPL fantasy a bit as well, and the scoring system on that shit because
It's so shit.
the point system needs an update. I don't know if they have or not. I haven't really gone back to it. But anyway, yeah, I've always played NRL Supercoach, and it's kind of stemmed from a bunch of mates down at uni. We all lived on campus there, and all avid followers of NRL. And every year we've got this big group chat going. There's about 12 of us in there, and we create a big league every year, and it's pretty high banter, high stakes, talking shit all the time. And yeah, we've been playing that for a good, I'm going to say 10 plus years now. So yeah, that's kind of where it began. And then, yeah, they finally brought out NFL Supercoach this year, and I was actually pretty last minute onto it because it wasn't really advertised too much. And then I went to a Bucks party of all places, and my mate from uni was there and told me to make a team, and kind of sat down in the moment then and made half of it and then reviewed it a week later, and that was about it, really.
Mate, that's the best way. That's the best way things actually happen, right? Like,
The best decisions are made on the beers.
yeah, that's the best. That's where we do our best work. Yeah, look,
Countless times I had 50-50s where I'd be on a few beers and then I'd make the decision then, and yeah.
that's why it's great to talk to you, mate, because like me and Matty C, when we started this podcast, we were like, well, we don't know exactly who we're going to get. Are we going to get people that have done NFL fantasy that are trying Supercoach for the first time? Are we going to get super coaches that have never done NFL fantasy? We're getting dribs and drabs from both. And it's really cool to hear you say that, like that you hadn't actually sort of delved into the NFL's fantasy side of it, because you obviously mentioned that you do NRL and you like that classic style more than the actual draft style. So it's actually really cool to see like what people are actually listening to the pod or actually just doing NFL Supercoach in general. So that's really cool.
I find with Supercoach, like Classic, for example, it's very much kind of on you. And yeah, you can like get advice from others and whatnot, but ultimately you're going to make the final decision. Whereas with draft, the draft day is a great day, a great night. You have a lot of fun with that. But then after it's kind of done, it's locked in, and then you're kind of just watching for the rest of the year. And no one's ever trading with you really, because no one wants to give up players or be undersold. And you got to obviously pick up the right waivers, and you've got to do a lot of research to kind of keep involved in that. Whereas I feel like with Supercoach, you don't have to make as much research, but yeah, you still kind of got the final decision on how your team goes.
Yep, and that's what's awesome. And you know, just as a sort of giveaway, like we're going to sort of run a Supercoach draft and Supercoach Classic show. So the Classic show will stay the same as it's always been, but that's because like there are people that love both. They love either the Classic or the draft. Like there's just people like different stuff, and it's really cool. Like I'm with you. I kind of like doing both. I've been super into the draft side with NFL. I've liked the NRL draft style, but when it comes to the NRL side of it, I've kind of always liked the Classic version the most. It's just cool. It's different. Like challenging yourself against 180,000 people or something, like trying to get a overall record is really cool. And then you've got your own sort of groups and, you know, head-to-head leagues and stuff like that bases it off that. So I really like that side myself. From my end, I've played NFL fantasy for maybe, I want to say maybe 18 years. I was pretty young. I was sort of playing basketball growing up. I was luckily enough. Actually, I'll leave that for another segment. But I played a lot of basketball. I had some mates that were super into it, and then I had a really, really good mate that I knew growing up through the basketball scene that got me into it. Rest in peace. He unfortunately passed away, and he'd moved over to Atlanta and stuff like that. But he got me into it when I was probably 17 or 18. I'm 36 now. So basically half my life I've been playing NFL fantasy. And that's why me and Matty C sort of felt like we had a bit of a niche and, you know, a look into NFL fantasy that maybe a lot of Australians didn't have. And we sort of started that podcast about 5 or so years ago. And then obviously the Supercoach podcast this year when it started. So for Supercoach in general, I've kind of almost dabbled in everything. I've very much been on the NRL side. Like I've been playing that for probably the same. Like I've been playing with mates in head-to-head leagues when I was probably only 18, 19. And then I had a few mates when I moved to Canberra that got me into more of the overall stuff. I was more into head-to-head before that. And then just having a crack at overall is really, really fun and the classic side of it, like you mentioned. And I got like 30th in AFL finals Supercoach last year. So
oh, wow.
like I haven't really been as serious about AFL. But yeah, I've kind of always dabbled in pretty much anything that's popped up. Had a little bit of BBL, but BBL pissed me off fucking serious. Like, it used to do my head in that you do all the fucking research in the world and the guy goes out there and fucking
Get skittled first ball.
Yeah, he fucking swings to the cow corner in the first ball and gets bowled, and you're like, I got him as captain, my whole fucking season's ruined. So that shit used to do my head in, and I didn't actually jump into EPL this year, but I might have a crack at that next year. But look, long story short, I'm mostly an NRL super coacher, and then obviously, really, really serious about my NFL. All right. Next, mate, this is a very general question. I just thought we'd get to know the person we're talking to. Tell us something about yourself that the viewers wouldn't know.
Yeah, so I try to keep this on topic to NFL in itself. And, I'm a fly-in, fly-out worker. I work out at sea for half the year, actually. And more often than not, the Starlink on board is pretty useless. So the alternative option is this shit-house satellite internet that's lucky to load a message. And from that, I pretty well relied. I was at sea from the start of the season until about week 12, I think it was.
Right.
And so a lot of my decisions were based off podcasts, and especially this podcast. And the reason for that being is I couldn't load any articles for most of the time. And when I was in port, I would go through and download the podcast when I can, so then I had a time to listen to then make my decisions or whatnot. It just kind of goes to show that you don't need to be consistently researching and trying to find all these little subtleties yourself, and you don't need to put in a whole heap of effort. And you can, if you find a good podcast that has good information and a good community that throws up good questions that everyone's kind of thinking, that's enough to kind of bounce off and make your decisions.
That's awesome, man. Like that's so good to hear. And like we're always after feedback, honestly. Like the thing is about like me having a bit of a Supercoach background and Matty C probably not so much, was my first thought was we've got to get a mailbag out there. So like Supercoaches are asking us everything that Supercoaches need to know, because we're like, well, we're not going to know that, answer. We need to know what you guys need from us. So that was kind of the first thought about the actual mailbag. And, our first thought or two was that we're going to do the trade it in and trade it out. We both subscribed to make sure we were getting that. And so all this podcast is, and it's going to continue to be, is something that helps you, the super coaches. Like we like to think that we might be, sort of good at the NFL fantasy side of it, but in the end, it's only as good as what you guys get out of it. So, we're really, really happy to hear that story from you, and I hope there are other stories about that, because if we've just helped one person, honestly, in Australia, help their sort of NFL Supercoach journey, then we've done our job. And to hear you doing that, mate, that's absolutely awesome.
The ultimate thing is, like, you can have a lot of fun with it, but it doesn't have to take up all your time. Like, no. You can find ways to get all the info you need, and that's definitely through these kind of podcasts.
Absolutely, mate. And we're going to constantly be here for all you guys, like, moving forward. And the fact that you've just gone and won yourself an NFL jersey by winning a group and having an amazing overall record. Hopefully we was, at least somewhat part of that on your journey. For me, something about myself, I've kind of gone completely away from the NFL side of it, because I feel like that's all Matty C and I have talked about. We kind of haven't really delved into our own personal lives and stuff. I'll give you two quick ones. One, I played professional basketball in Australia. I was playing for the Illawarra Hawks, or the Wollongong Hawks at the time, for a couple of years when I was between 18 and 20. So when they brought out NBL Supercoach, I felt like I had an inside line a little bit, but it turns out with Supercoach, you really never do. It's kind of similar to the NFL side of it. And then the NFB, bloody, for anyone that's doing NBL this year, it's a fucking absolute monstrosity what the fuck they've done to NBL Supercoach this year with the Beat the Coach thing, but that's another story. But yeah, in the end, I played for a couple of years, grew up playing a lot of basketball, was the AAS, knew Paddy Mills quite well, just a lot of guys around the Australian basketball scene. Another one that's completely different from sport. I thought I'd give you one sport, one and one, completely not. My family and I were on Family Feud game show.
Nice.
About God, how long was it? About 8 years ago now. It was just before I had my first child. We actually went on and won. We went all 5 nights and won the car, my family and I. So I just thought that was a kind of funny thing for anyone that's, got me on Facebook. I've definitely got some photos. I'm 6'7", nearly 6'8". So my brother's a little bit shorter than me, and we're about probably a foot taller than Grant Denyer, who was the host. So got some photos on there comparing to him, and we had an absolute amazing time. So I just thought that would be something that people probably didn't know about me, because I can't imagine that ever would have just randomly come up in the SuperCoach podcast. So yeah, that's a couple of things about me that the viewers might not know.
There you go. Just on the you playing basketball as well, if you were still playing basketball and playing NBL Supercoach, how often would you have captained yourself?
Not many times. When I say not many times, never. I will say that I still hold an NBL record for the highest free throw percentage of all time, and I'll just say it's 100%.
One from one?
It's 100%, and I'll never, ever announce how many free throws I shot. I'll just let you know that it was 100%.
Someone research that and get back to him.
It's not a good. I think there's a 0% field goal percentage, but anyway. Tough times for old Taylor Goodall. Look, I've got a couple of questions left. One you kind of already answered, so I might just brush through that. I sort of was going to ask you about your favourite NFL team and how you found them. You kind of already mentioned that. So we'll go to the last one. An honest review for the SuperCoach HALFA podcast.
Yeah, so, as I mentioned before, it was super helpful. I loved it. I thought it was very much the ultimate decision to a lot of my decisions, as well as bouncing between my group who also listened to your podcast as well. It was definitely the final point on the beginning of the week on what our final decisions were going to be, and that was the most helpful part of it. And a lot of it kind of came through people's questions, which is probably the most invaluable part of it, where someone would bring something up that everyone was thinking, and then you guys would delve into it a bit more and produce those stats or produce alternatives and other options or other ways to go around it. And then that just gave myself a better kind of a range of information to kind of decide off. And I thought it was amazing. I think you guys did a really good job, and keep it up and keep it up for next year.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, mate. Like, I don't know if you've heard it through the podcast, but I feel like almost every single week I'm so thankful to the SuperCoach community for the support you guys gave us. Like, when we started this pod, we really didn't have much in mind for what the support would be. We just thought we would get something out there for the SuperCoaches. We sort of had our NFL fantasy show for 5 or 6 years, and it's a tough nut to crack when there's a lot of Americans doing the same thing. But we thought, here's an opportunity to talk to Australians about an Australian product about NFL. So there aren't obviously Americans doing that. So we thought, why not have a couple of Aussies talking, about something they're super passionate about that could help you guys with your SuperCoach teams. And to hear, like, honestly, if we got 10 or 15 viewers, we would have been stoked. But to have 300 plus in our group in the first season of NFL Supercoach, which should only grow and get more people moving forward, was absolutely phenomenal. And to hear your feedback and the feedback I've been getting in my DMs from a lot of people has been phenomenal. You're probably part of this. I was pretty on the front foot of reaching out to people about the podcast. I probably pissed some people off. I was definitely reaching out before when we first brought out the podcast and DMs for anyone that was sort of, had already sort of joined that Facebook NFL Supercoach group. I was pretty much on the front foot trying to reach out to people. Just let you know, if you didn't listen, that was fine. I didn't want to, have a bloody lawsuit against me for fucking reaching out to too many people. There was a few days there where I think I got put on Facebook bans because I'd reached out to too many people. They thought I was spamming, and it's been such an awesome ride. So, mate, to hear that feedback from you and the other people was just phenomenal, and to be able to give you an NFL jersey, just a token of our, I guess, appreciation for you and everyone else listening, is phenomenal, mate. So thank you so much.
Yeah, much appreciated. And yeah, just on that as well, this was the first year of NFL Supercoach, so there really isn't that many podcasts out there at the moment, and I personally found this to be by far the best one. So I think everyone should continue to support it and kind of treat it as the OG and continue to get it to build and, yeah, keep that community going and get the good questions out there, and everyone will benefit from it.
Mate, thank you. Thank you so much. And, again, I feel like I've given superlatives to everyone so much. So if there's anyone I haven't thanked, you know how appreciative I am of everyone out there for the listening that they've given to this podcast. Look, that's basically everything I've got for tonight. So I just want to say a huge congratulations again to Joshua Foote. Thank you again for coming on tonight, and congratulations for winning our first ever NFL Supercoach Halfa group, taking home the custom jersey. We're going to definitely have, some prizes moving forward. There might even be, obviously we've got the NFL coming to Australia next year that we're all super excited about. We're definitely going to be giving you more giveaways. But I just want to congratulate you again, mate, for winning our inaugural season.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I very much appreciate it. And looking forward to next year to defend my crown.
Absolutely. There's going to be hopefully we're getting over 1,000 people trying to take you down next year, mate. So
yeah, bring it on.
Absolutely. But thank you again for the support. And again, I just want to take this opportunity just to thank you all out there for listening. You're probably sick of hearing me say it, but I'm going to say it again. Thank you so much for the season. It's been phenomenal. 2025/26 has been phenomenal. I can't wait to see where NFL Supercoach goes moving forward, and I can't wait to possibly crown Joshua as the back-to-back champion, or have a new champion for next year. So on behalf of Matty C and myself, the entire Australian Gridiron Network, thank you so much to everyone, and we'll see you back next year. Hooroo.
Get it faster. Taylor leads Matty's laughter. NFL Supercoach Halfa. NFL Supercoach Halfa. Get your edge, get it faster.